All right. Welcome back to The Perspective, everybody, here on WWSU 106.9 FM. Welcoming in Mr. Tom Nichols. He's the Director of Media and Broadcasting for the Dayton Dragons and the voice of the Dragons on 980 WONE AM here in Dayton. Tom, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Parker.
All right. So I guess my first question is, I read that you were a Ball State graduate. How did you get started in radio?
Well, I wanted to get in radio from the very beginning. My high school had a radio station, and my intentions as I even started high school were to try to look for a career as a sports broadcaster. And at that time, I entered the program and went to college to be a broadcaster, and found a job that would give me some experience at a commercial radio station while I was in college, and just continued down that line. It was a long trip to get from point A to point B, but if you enter this business, you've got to be willing to pay your dues. And it's a lot different, of course, than it was when I was getting in back in the 1980s, but there's still some opportunities out there if for an interested person, just a little different road than the one I took.
So this is going to be your 33rd year as a broadcaster. Is there anything that you try to change or alter when it comes to your style, or is it just kind of the same routine for you?
Well, I think every year you look at anything you might be able to improve on, whether it might be topics that we discuss on radio broadcasts or segments in our pre and post game show, or maybe improving our crowd microphone to give us better field sound. Anything we could do that might make things more interesting for the listeners. You never really go into a season and say, well, I don't want to do anything better than I did last year. You look for things that you feel like as the technology changes, the world changes, what can we do a little differently than we did last year that would make things more interesting for the listeners? And so every year, I think we try to look for those types of opportunities that we might come up with.
So was there someone that was sort of a mentor to you when you were first starting out, or someone that you idolized?
Well, there are a lot of people that could fit that description. I'm not sure there'd only be one, but I can tell you the couple of people that maybe helped me the most in terms of getting into the business would be the manager of the high school station I worked at, helped me get my first job in radio after high school, which I hadn't gotten that job. Who knows if I'd ever even gotten started in radio. And he made some phone calls and found a local radio station that needed an 18-year-old kid to come in and run the board for high school football broadcasts. And that's how I got started. So that was an important step. And then in terms of getting into baseball, the longtime radio voice of the Indianapolis Indians is a gentleman by the name of Howard Kellman. And I called Howard in February of 1988 and said, I'd like to get a job in baseball, minor league baseball, as a broadcaster. How do I do that? And he said, well, it's a little late this year. The season starts in April, it's February, but we do have an opening for a few games with our team. And if you want to send me a tape, I'll listen. I did that. And he called me back and he promised me one game. And I did that one game, and he gave me more games. And it eventually grew into a pretty good part-time position with that team. And I worked with him for 2 years and gave me a lot of pointers. He's still with him to this day. That was 1988. He was already a veteran at that time. He'd been with the team, I think, for about 15 years at that point. So at this time, I think he's been with that ball club since 1974, so a long time. And maybe more than anyone else, he was responsible for my opportunity to get involved in minor league baseball. And then once I left there, I had to kind of fly my own route and take it from there. And it's been a good career for me.
Where did your love for sports kind of come from? Was it something that did you play baseball as growing up, or any other sports? Where did that kind of passion come from for you?
Yeah, I played all the sports growing up: baseball, basketball, football. Big baseball fan. Listened to Reds on radio I guess the first time I listened would have probably been 1971. I was 7 years old. The broadcaster at that time for the Reds was Al Michaels. And it probably all developed out of just being the oldest child in a sports family. My dad played baseball and softball, and my mom was very supportive. And as time went along, my siblings got involved in sports in one way or another. My brother was a great high school baseball player and a high school basketball player, and eventually went on to play college basketball. And just growing up in a sports family, and I probably was the biggest sports fan in the family. And it was an interest I developed, listened to a lot of broadcasts, not necessarily because I was listening to try to develop broadcasting skills myself. I was just a fan. I enjoyed listening. Again, at first it was Al Michaels and Joe Nuxall, and then eventually Marty Brenneman and Joe Nuxall for many, many years. And that's how I developed the interest, and it just came along step by step. And again, getting in the business, I always say the first job's always the hardest one to get. So I was fortunate. I look back on it, and I had a lot of lucky breaks along the way, and it allowed me to have a long career, and one that I've enjoyed a lot.
Have you had the opportunity to broadcast sports other than baseball?
Yeah, I did a lot of other sports for a long time. I haven't for a while. I did high school and college basketball, did high school football, did one season of minor league hockey. I wasn't a hockey fan, to be honest with you, but it was, it came with the job. I took a baseball job, a AA baseball job in Mobile, Alabama, and the owner of the team also owned an East Coast Hockey League team. And they explained to me that if you want to do the baseball, you're going to have to do the hockey too. And I said, well, I don't know anything about hockey. And they said, well, you got a few months to learn. So I learned as much as I could so I wouldn't sound like someone who was completely foreign to the sport. And I got to a point where if you didn't know too much about hockey, you probably couldn't tell that I didn't know a lot about it. And it was fun. I really enjoyed the players and coaches. They were great to work with, and the fans were very passionate. I enjoyed it. It was just one season, and I've been all baseball ever since. I haven't done anything but baseball since probably the 90s, I guess. So it's been over 20 years of just baseball. I did also do a season with a NASCAR team as a media relations person. I really enjoyed that too. It was a lot of fun. Growing up in Indiana, I was a big Indy 500 IndyCar fan. Right. This was NASCAR, which wasn't necessarily my, I was more of an IndyCar fan than I was a NASCAR fan, but I really enjoyed the NASCAR part of it. But baseball's been, for me, it's been the big sport all the way. The other things have come along. And I'm a big NFL football fan, big Chicago Bears fan, but I watch all the games. I've got NFL Sunday Ticket, but baseball for me has been my livelihood.
So you're one of the few broadcasters to work at every minor league level, where if it's from low A ball to high AAA, what's the biggest difference from your eyes in the as you progress through the levels of the minor league baseball?
Good question. They all had something about them that made them special. As you move up, quite simply, the players are just older and more experienced and more polished. And I'm looking forward to this season. The Dragons will be a high A club for the first time ever after being a low A club for 20 years. And because of that, we'll have, again, a little older, more experienced, more polished players. So the games will be a little cleaner. The pitchers will be a little better, throw more strikes. Defense will be a little more polished. You won't see as many mistakes defensively. Again, the games will move along a little more smoothly because pitchers are throwing more strikes. Umpires will be a little bit better because they're more experienced too. And it's something I'm looking forward to this year a lot. I was absolutely thrilled when I heard that our league was going to move up and be a high A league for the first time in 2021. And it's something I look forward to.
What's something that comes to mind for you when you think about the memorable moments over your time as a broadcaster? Well,
there have been a lot of them. Whether you want to pick any city I've been in. I think I've been in 7 different places as a baseball broadcaster in the minor leagues. They've all had something. This place in Dayton has had many, many memorable moments. And of course, for me personally, I did get a chance to do a major league game in 2018 with Marty Brennaman and Jeff Brantley. And that was obviously very memorable after so many years of riding the buses, getting one chance to work in the major leagues for one night. And that was a great thing. But the big thing about baseball is for us, there's 140 games. This year, we're playing a little shorter schedule because of COVID, 120, but 140 games. Every time you come to a game, there's a chance that night's game might be a no-hitter or a game where a player hits 4 home runs or just something that makes it historical in nature. And that's the thing about baseball. And every night's a new night. You can be on a losing streak, but the next day's a new day. You can be on a winning streak and try to maintain that kind of momentum. So for us, we've had, I think over the Dragons' history, 108 future major leaguers have come through Dayton. Many famous players like Joey Votto and Jay Bruce and Johnny Cueto and Todd Frazier, and some who got to the major leagues for just a short time. Probably the most exciting player to come through here was Billy Hamilton, who stole 103 bases in one season for us in 2011. The most exciting week or month would have been in 2017 when we had a player at that time by the name of Jose Siri, who broke the 40-year-old league record for longest hitting streak, and he hit in 39 consecutive games. The record was 35, and as he got close enough to think about breaking that record, it became really, really dramatic each time he'd come to the plate, whether we were winning or losing that day. His performance kind of became the centerpiece of the game, and he eventually broke the record. And I can't think of anything that I've ever been involved with that was as dramatic and as exciting as when he broke that record. And so that was a fun time. But we also, of course, from a team standpoint, the Dragons broke the all-time record in professional sports for longest sellout streak in 2011. And that was a special night, no doubt about it. Something I'll never forget. And a lot of people here that night that were in for just that game, famous people like Magic Johnson and Archie Griffin. They were part owners of the team at that time, and a number of others also. And just a chance over the years to come to the ballpark every day and, say I'm part of a team that has been very successful in the history of minor league sports has been a thrill for me as well.
So from a fan's perspective, what is I know there's so many, I'm a baseball fan myself, but what is sort of your favorite aspect of the game, whether it's following a box score or following a player as they progress throughout their career? What, from a fan's perspective for you, is your favorite aspect of baseball?
I'd say the strategy that comes into every game, and it's changed a lot in the last few years, of course, and maybe a lot would say, and I would agree, maybe not for the better. We've gone away from the most exciting elements, and I think there's some efforts ongoing to sort of get us back to where we were in terms of strategy, where it's become now sort of a wait for somebody to hit a home run as opposed to get on base, steal second, guy hits the ball to the right side, moves you to third, and you score on a fly ball or you bunt him over. Those things are gone from the game, really, and it's become all about the home run. And because of that, there's more strikeouts, there's fewer hits, there's more home runs. But the strategy of the game is always fun. And I think if you work in the minor leagues as a fan or as a broadcaster, there's a lot of enjoyment out of following a guy that you knew in your town as he moves on up through the ladder and eventually gets to the big leagues. And you see him get there and you say, hey, that guy we knew him when he was just a young kid and playing here and trying to improve his skills. And I enjoy following the guys all the way up through the minor leagues and hoping they can just step from single A to double A to triple A and then get to the big leagues. And it's a lot easier to do now than when I was younger, when Obviously now I can go online at any point and see how any player's doing with a couple of clicks, where, people my age or older would remember when the only access you had to statistics was the morning newspaper, which had very little, or a magazine that might come once a week and have enough statistics that were by that time probably outdated by about 2 weeks. And now you can go online and follow games pitch by pitch as they're happening. Different world now in many ways, but enjoying following those players as they climb up through the minor leagues and eventually get to the major leagues, and keep an eye on the players. I checked the box score. I mentioned Billy Hamilton a few minutes ago, and I checked this morning when I got up to see how he did last night for the White Sox, the team he's with right now, as we record this interview, see how he's doing with the White Sox on a daily basis. I still check him, and I'll do the same thing with a lot of other players that played in Dayton. And when I was in other cities, did the same thing there. So that's part of it as well. When you're in the minor leagues, you follow those guys all the way to the major leagues and even after they get there.
Well, Tom, I can't thank you enough for your time today. I really appreciate it. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Parker.